Lead generation, I'm sure, is a hot topic, if not for all of you, then most of you. And as Tomer mentioned, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, we recently released lead gen forms for sponsor content and soon for InMail. One of our partners, Emory University, has been taking advantage of these and has been seeing some great success. So they are generous enough to be here to share some of their insights with us. So please help me welcome to the stage Nicole from Emory and Michelle from their agency Converge.
Thanks, Ricky.
All right. Thank you so much, Ricky. So Nicole and I are very excited to be here today to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've been hearing about today. So we heard about agency and university partnerships, as well as some of these great products. So really, how do you listen to what's needed and then find those students and then maximize on that data? You do this by identifying your audience, taking advantage of high-impact targeting, and then measuring ROI.
So on the listen side of the house, like Michelle said, it really is about identifying who your audience is. That means looking at your historical data to see what has and hasn't converted in the past. But maybe more importantly, it's also about listening to your internal stakeholders and understanding what they want to see and the types of prospects that you bring into the pipeline. So for us at Goizueta, that meant sitting down with 3 internal stakeholders: our program office, our admissions team, and our career office. And because what they want from prospects sometimes differs a bit, we actually put them in the same room so they could hear from one another, and we could really outline and pinpoint the types of profiles or personas of the students that they wanted us to bring into the pipeline for them. So for instance, our admissions team, they're worried about yield. So they're looking at different types of attributes that have converted in the past. So the types of feeder schools, the types of industries, GMAT scores. Our program office, they're all about the classroom experience, diversity of thought. So they're thinking about a range of industries that are going to be represented. They're worried about domestic versus international students. Do we have enough women in the program? And then you have our career office. They're measured on, are they getting our students jobs? So they're all about what industries are these students coming from and job functions, and what do they want to go into? And sometimes what they're looking for differs among the 3 groups. So this is also a really good time to talk about underrepresented and overrepresented attributes. Do we have too many people coming from traditional industries such as finance? Do we need to look at underrepresented industries like nonprofit? Do they want us to focus more on getting more women into the program? Once you can have this kind of heart-to-heart conversation with these groups and really narrow down and pinpoint these personas, you can have really fruitful conversations with your agency about how to find those people.
Absolutely. And this is an exercise that we do go through with a lot of our universities. When we first met with Emory, I remember they had such a clear idea of who their student is, down to, within a 2-year MBA, there's still 3 unique personas within that. So how do you really get into the segmentation of audiences to take advantage of those personas and understand the messaging that you're delivering to them? So that, of course, is through this high-impact targeting that we're talking about. So we've talked a little bit today about the different ways. And if you missed out on the best practices masterclass, I think this will do a nice job of kind of wrapping that up. But so things like looking at years of experience versus targeting by age. So a lot of people get caught up in all of the different components that are within LinkedIn targeting, such as, it's an age range in there. I know that my student is typically 24 to 32. Well, it's actually more effective to use years of experience targeting. And again, this just allows us to measure the student by their years of experience as well as their job seniority. Taking advantage of those industries as well as the specific job functions that are that they're performing within there. We also like to talk a lot about what are the types of goals that you're looking to reach. So somebody alluded to this earlier, what does quality actually mean? When a university tells us that they're looking to improve the quality of their students, that's where we really have to listen to the goals that Nicole was talking about earlier. So if this is where you'll see these two examples on the screen here, that we're talking about a wide range of audiences. For sponsored content, LinkedIn typically recommends an audience size of around 300,000. And so you can see that there's the ability to go a lot wider spread by targeting, of course, by geography. In this case, it's the full United States. But we're also looking at excluding degrees versus actually including degrees. So another way that you can make audience too narrow is by layering in that you require a bachelor's degree when you're targeting for a graduate program. Not everybody lists this in there. It's kind of identified by their graduation year. And so a more effective way to target these users then is by layering in their actual undergraduate field of study versus that degree. And within this audience, you can also see where they recommend not layering in too many different types of targeting options. So, for example, the audience on the left, not only are we narrowing it down to a pretty specific demographic area, market area, but we're also layering in the size of the company, saying we need at least 3 years experience, and then only targeting by one job function. Other ways to take advantage of this targeting is the matched audiences that they were just talking about, Tomer and Percy earlier. And so what we're looking at here then is those feeder companies. So what you can do with these is not only take advantage of these feeder companies where you can layer them in and then create matched audiences, but you can also do this with your retargeting lists as well as your alumni. So adding those audiences in and then using those matched audience to find similar users on LinkedIn. So then we're going a little bit more into the ad format. So everybody knows the tried and true standard text ads. So how do you take advantage of this? We've done a lot of testing with logos versus imagery here. So of course the logo offers that brand recognition and really solidifies, calls attention to it. But an image can actually make the ad more personal and show a person to be able to really picture themselves within that program. And we also know that we need to have action-oriented messaging because you only have their attention for just a moment. So ensuring that there's strong copy there and most importantly, regular bid adjustments, constantly keeping track of what the competitors are paying. And then talking a little bit more about sponsored content. So right here you can see at the bottom there that the click-through rate on these are 10 times higher than those of text ads. So making sure that you're certainly taking advantage of this ad type and using a combination of student stories, alumni, and as well as interesting facts. So not only just calling out a testimonial and really showcasing a quote from your student to help them sell that value prop that you want to portray, but also taking advantage of the opportunity to talk about a recent student trip and just again, going back to kind of the organic content that we were talking about earlier, knowing that this is your biggest opportunity to really engage with your prospective student. And then as Ricky mentioned, we have been having great success with the lead generation ad type. So again, these are very mobile specific so that it really creates an ease for the user because they don't have to fill in the information. It's going to pre-populate with those fields that you select. There are some that don't fully pull in the information, and so you want to limit those types of fields and not have as many that require manual entry. And again, just limiting the overall number of fields. I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of different agencies, but we talk about that on landing pages. Really keeping the minimal information required on that field to follow up with them will increase your chances of a conversion. And then ensuring that there is a link in there. That was one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this. Everybody pictures it as being on that mobile device, but there is a chance that they'll be seeing it just on desktop. So it's still including a link to your landing page. And then finally, ensuring there's a clear next step. So making it very clear what they will get. Are they downloading a program guide? Are they registering for an information session, et cetera? The exciting thing about these ads, as you can see from the data points at the bottom there, over an 18% higher click-through rate when compared to regular sponsored content, as well as an almost 88% increase in conversion rate. So when we first launched these with Emory, we saw just huge volume within the first few days, and we've really seen that sustained as time has gone on. I know somebody had a question earlier about, how do we stay on top of these? You tell us to follow up with them right away, but how do we really do that? So one of the great things with these ads is there are a few CRMs that they integrate directly with, but there's also tools like Zapier and DriftRock that allow you to connect directly with your CRM, and that way they're followed up with in the same manner as you would with any of your digital advertising leads. All right, so final point here, kind of the topic of the day, how do we measure that ROI? So really what we always stress is test, test, test. So the first time you do anything, it's never going to be perfect. You're just kind of throwing that out there and really seeing what works. So the only way to keep making your data better and your results better is to consistently rotate ad copy, change up the imagery, and really make sure that you have a good understanding of what your audience is responding to. We talked earlier about identifying those individual personas, so ensuring that there is compelling ad copy for each individual persona, understanding what triggers them to want to take the next move, what motivates them, why are they earning this degree, things like that. And then finally, capitalizing on those reporting tools on the platform. So they talked about the website demographics report. Those have been incredibly helpful. As they mentioned, there might be a certain segment that you haven't originally targeted, but you really see a high click-through rate from that segment when actually layering in the demographics, and then you can use that to create additional audiences and again continue testing.
And I know Michelle just said this, but I think it's worth saying again that whenever possible, whether it's LinkedIn or another platform, make sure that you're integrating your ad campaigns with your CRM. So that way you can attribute not just leads, but also applications and actual students to the different touch points that they've had through your ad campaigns.
Absolutely. And we've talked about the funnel somewhat today as well. I know that Nina and Joel spoke about this, and just really keeping in mind all of the different channels that are available and understanding where your student's at in their journey. It's not just the journey from the initial lead to enrolled student, but really understanding that there's a journey from the first touch point to actually submitting their information to you before you're even really aware that they exist. So understanding that LinkedIn is the most trusted ad platform, and that's a great way to reach those graduate students. So as we look at the key takeaways, again, just to kind of wrap it up, listen, really knowing your audience, using your historical data to your advantage to ensure that you are achieving optimal results by narrowing in on that specific audience. Connecting with your right fit candidates through the high targeting options, understanding your goals of whether you'd like to have higher impressions or get more nuanced and have a specific type of student that you're enrolling. And then we know nothing without metrics. So again, to the CRM point, really understanding as students are coming into the CRM, where they're coming from, what sources are working well for you, and how can you tweak an individual channel to set yourself up better.
That's our 15 minutes.